Going in tight, coming out loose. That's the name of this, right?
Uh, yeah,
hmm
this isn't dirty, and the NASCAR people will just understand.
Welcome to Going In Tight.
Coming out loose.
This is your host, Bart Lewis, and my co-host, Chris Gibson.
Yeah, now let's just start talking about this whole podcast here and why we're doing it. We're the atypical fans trying to bring the atypical point of view here, and
I think so.
yeah,
I think we just want to approach it from a different way and try to find something that we can connect with fans out there that are like us, because I know they exist, but they're just not the norm.
yeah. I think it's like we've talked about plenty of times. You know, when we were young, I moved from Georgia where I found a love for it, and then I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where it was mainly basketball, and it wasn't exactly NASCAR was winning your friends at the time. So I kind of hid my fandom and ended up falling out of the sport. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that's pretty much dead on. Grew up with it. My dad was always watching it growing up, and that's kind of what got me hooked. We went to a race, and like anybody, like once you go to a race, you're just hooked. Like you're a fan.
Right.
And so growing up, we went to a lot of bush races at Nashville Fairgrounds, and we went to Darlington. We have family outside of Darlington, so we went to Darlington a few times, and really, really loved the sport. And that was kind of the same. Like I didn't have any way to connect with anybody around it. There was none of my friends liked it. They were like, going in circles. And Jeff Gordon, you like Jeff Gordon? And so I kind of like hit it, and I eventually fell out of the sport a little bit in the 2000s, and maybe like 4 years ago, just like fell back into it. Like, man, I love this. I can't believe I stopped watching. So now I'm just hardcore. Who cares?
Yeah, I think, the point of the whole podcast is you and I are not, when you see us walking down the street, you wouldn't grab us and go, "Hey, you're a NASCAR fan." I think we bring, like you said, a different take on it, and it's different than all the other podcasts. I mean, we're not going to be pulling Yarborough and Daryl Waltrip like Dale Jr. does, or it's purely a from the couch behind the fence type of podcast where we're just going to be talking about what it is to be a fan and get our friends in on it and have them talking about it, whether they're fans or not. And
Yeah, I think we're office folk. So, I mean, this is
Mhm.
what we would want to do if we had people at the office wanting to talk about this around the water cooler or the Keurig these days. So I think, yeah, we just got to do it in a way that it connects to the masses because they're not a dime a dozen. But I think if people really knew how cool it was and they just didn't have this persona about, oh man, that's a hillbilly sport, or they're just going in circles. Like if they really knew just the details behind it, of the all the drive and the details and all the
Yeah.
work that goes into it, and just the level of finesse and
I mean, it's. I think the big thing is like you said, people have that stereotypical person that they think, and I mean, we all dress up like the stereotype when we go and we
hmm
play the stereotype, but they have that stereotype that it's hillbillies. It's just not always been a good look for it, and then nobody realizes that there's guys that have desk jobs, there's frat boys that want to go watch the races and be at the races, and then you've got your good old boys and your down home people that are gearheads and have grown up around cars and enjoy that. And I don't think anybody can know it. I don't think we can know it. Well, you can, because you got to drive 153 miles an hour.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. My wife for my birthday this past year got me the driver experience down in Talladega. So I forget how fast I went. I think it was like 165. was my fastest lap.
Yeah.
So, like, actually getting to feel that a little bit, like, there is no possible way that you can get me in a car going at least like 40 miles an hour faster
Mm-hmm.
with 40 other cars side by side, relying on a guy going high, low, clear, high, low, clear. No way. Like, just going around the corner or going around the banking, I mean, you're just fighting it.
I mean, I couldn't imagine. I want to do one of the experiences like you did. Hopefully you're getting it in my wife's ear that she needs to buy that for me for Christmas or my birthday or something like that. But
So, what do you think? You going to Kentucky? You going to sit in the stands or?
well, if they let me, I'm gonna go because you know, I hadn't been to a race with my dad since the 2001 Cracker Barrel 500 at Atlanta. So we got pit passes and the fan pass and everything, and we'll be down there in the fan zone all day. And then I got us some front row seats right on the finish line so that we can get that rubber on the face feel again. So if fans are back after all this COVID stuff, you know, we'll definitely try and make it. We'll wear our mask and be safe. Might have to get one with like a flip in it so I can drink my beer, but we're definitely going to try and go. Do you think you're going to try and make it up?
I'd like to. I almost bought the tickets right before this happened, so kind of glad I didn't. But
Right.
also hoping I get to. I'd also like to go to Bristol this year.
We had
Maybe
talked about
Eldora,
that.
it's up your way.
Yeah, that's a couple hours away. Hold on. Yep. Sorry, I had to pop a beer. Yeah, I'd like to go to Eldora with the trucks. And by the way, speaking of trucks, welcome to the Chevy family.
Yeah, I feel much more a part of my fandom or whatever you want to call it now that I drive Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Bow tie, got the bow tie out front,
Yes, sir.
but I've been driving a Nissan Maxima for the last 15 years, and I just liked them. My parents bought it for me. It was like a '93 Maxima, and had all the bells and whistles. But it was also
Of a 93
it was
Maxima.
it was a piece, but it was also nice for a kid that was 16 years old. But it had all
Right.
kinds of electrical issues on it. It had a key. The key was bent. It didn't have the the key ring hole was broke, so it was just a key that was bent. And you couldn't put it in the keyhole because if you did, the car alarm would go off. So it had a keypad on it. So you press start 6694, hold down 5. 5 rolls down the windows. Then you reach in, unlock the door, and that's how you got in the car. It had also the automatic seatbelt, so when you like open the door, it was like.
Yeah.
So I had a '93, a 2011, and a 17. So, but
There you go.
now I don't commute to an office anymore. I work from home, so time for a nice Chevrolet truck out front.
Yeah. See, I only briefly ventured away from the Chevy family. I was fortunate enough when I started driving to get my 97 Tahoe, the big white machine that you probably remember from college.
I do.
And then that bad boy blew a head gasket and it was 17 years old. So I sold that thing off for like $900 and still worked and everything, but sold it off to some other people who dare not know what went on in that vehicle. Or they wouldn't have paid the $900 they did for it. and then and then for a brief time from I guess it was 2013 to 2000 into 2014 I was driving my dad's 2001 Beamer. Went to a BMW for about a year and a half and then went back to my 2014 Chevy Malibu, and that honey is still purring.
I think that kind of like solidifies that we're not car people. Like,
Yeah.
we I can change a battery and I can change some brakes. That's about it.
I can change the cabin air filter to make sure that I'm not breathing in soot.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll pay the $20 and
I
an oil
did. I
change.
did. Yeah. I definitely. You know, I can change oil because when I was in high school, I got a parking ticket, and the Chevy Tahoe, and I
Mm.
had to pay it off. So I went and worked at this little Chevron station. It had 2 gas pumps, and I pumped gas for people, and then I changed oil and patched tires. So I know how to change oil. But now all these bells and whistles on these spaceships that they're putting out now,
Hmm.
I just take it to the dealership, ride out my warranty,
Yeah.
and the privilege that comes along with that. So
Yeah. Exactly. I'm kind of afraid to touch it. I mean,
yeah.
I was, I was more so like when I was a teenager, I would definitely like work on it, and
Hmm.
but now everything's so complicated and you don't know where everything is, and there's like 4 million wires. But anyway, like just we kind of like started from the top. Like we started liking NASCAR, and that made us branch out and like other things like
Right.
F1 and the lower tiers and the modifieds and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Which is not so much the track for most people. I think they start going out to their local dirt track or the local short track and seeing their buddies or their family race.
Right. Right.
My wife, they had a go-kart track behind their house, and then they raced elsewhere. So like they were big into racing, and
Nice.
that made them like NASCAR.
Right.
But we're kind of on the other end of that, where
We've
we
kind of gone
started with
backwards.
NASCAR. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are. Yeah, who knows? We
Yeah.
might be building cars one day.
Yeah. I mean, definitely that's the dream. Yeah, I mean, I've really gotten into ARCA. Um, now that we've got a shout out to NBC Track Pass, now that we've got that, definitely watching the ARCA races, and there's people down there that are making that more interesting, and Haley Deegan, and you know, um, I can't remember the dude that's on her team, but he performs pretty well. That shows my knowledge about it. But I like watching those races. I mean, they're short, and they take an hour on a Friday night to watch or Saturday night to watch, and then you team it up with the trucks and the Xfinity, and it's fun watching everything.
I hope that's what we can bring to this podcast is like
Yeah,
just in like some thoughts on how we can advance the sport. Because I do care. Like that's one of the things that really upsets me is when people are like, "Oh, no one goes to the sport. No one goes and watches the races anymore. No one watches that. No one cares." But it's not. I mean, if you think about when people are saying it's dying, like you still have 2 million people watching it on TV. You
right,
have like 50,000 plus people watching it. That's not a dying sport. That's a sport that a lot of people are interested in. So
right.
I care about making it better, and I hope that we can bring some additional insights to it. And I hope that I can get really crazy with some analytics on what I think about different things.
Yeah.
I know I'm making spreadsheets every week when it comes to fantasy. So
Right. Right. Well, and I'm in the same boat. I think it's one of those things that you and I have both come through, like the feeling of, oh, it's not cool to be here, and that's our own issue, but it's not cool to be a fan. You're not going to win people over being a fan, but I think the reason that we got to this point is we're like, nah, people need to be fans of this, and or at least show respect for it as a sport. And I really love the sport. I think both of us have a strong passion for the sport. Whether we're the atypical fan, I think one thing about all NASCAR fans is that everybody carries a strong passion for it. Whether it be for a brand or a driver, everybody has a strong passion for it. What race is on behind you?
that is like 95 Richmond.
Oh yeah. Well, the last thing that I'll bring up before we give a little glimpse into, what's going on in the next episode is Nashville. What do you think about I've got Kentucky about 35 minutes from me, and
Hmm.
Nashville's about 35 minutes from you. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I see what they're doing. They built the super speedway. I think it's like a little over a mile in Nashville, outside of Nashville, maybe like an hour from the city center, about 30 minutes from where I live. And it didn't really make it too long because everyone was like, "Is this snooze fest?" So it went away. It's now the parking lot's like a storage facility for Nissan, the Nissan plant that's down here. They just store cars. But I really do see that NASCAR and SMI, they want to bring NASCAR to the Nashville market, and it makes sense why. I mean, Nashville is a great tourist town. The track is literally in the city itself, and they just weren't able to make a deal that fast. They want to make changes, and they're listening to the fan, but they can't make that change that fast. And the reason why is because they have the fairgrounds board, where the fairgrounds is now the home of the Speedway, which was built in the early 1900s, and they have what was most recently a flea market. The flea market's being torn down to make a soccer stadium,
Okay.
and there's some old buildings that the fairgrounds support group doesn't want to be torn down, and so that's kind of like what's holding it up at this point. So the soccer stadium and the speedway have reached an agreement where they think that they can make it work between the two of them.
Nice.
But you have tornadoes that hit Nashville. You
Oh,
have
that's right. That's
coronavirus
right.
that hit Nashville. So nothing's happened since February. So at this point, the the schedule would have came out in April for 2021, but here we are. We're just getting a taste of just one track next year. So I think it's good. I'm really happy about it. It's 30 minutes, so I'm just gonna lift over there and have a
Yeah.
grand time. I
There you
hope
go.
that um, I think this NASCAR is also listening when it comes to Snooze Fest. So when they see the cookie cutter tracks and they see that it's really boring and it's all spread out and there's a ton of lap cars, that you just change the setup. So I think that they're doing that, and I hope that that has an impact on it. It really was upsetting to see Chase Elliott, who I value his opinions, tweet that one snooze fest and we're done in Nashville. That's really disappointing. So that was hard to see, but I have hopes that it'll be nice. But ultimately, I hope that we're at the fairgrounds. It's a short track and it has a lot of history, and that's really a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to NASCAR with me. Is just like I love the nostalgia and the history of it. So I
Right.
think it's really exciting that they're going back to the roots and they're actually listening to the fans for once. They're not trying to make this the NFL. They're listening to the roots of the.
Right.
They're listening to the
Yeah.
fans. So I really hope that one day that we can go back to North Wilkesboro, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
There's a
But
couple weeds that need to be cut out, and
I mean, they're building multi-million dollar gigantic tracks. I
hmm
don't see why they wouldn't put some money into that. I think it might also just be the local infrastructure, like where are people going to stay, but also Talladega has no hotels nearby either. So, like, you just got to rely on people camping or just traveling inward.
right, and
Just
Bristol as
bring back
well.
a yeah, and that's a problem with Bristol right now. Is there's the Tri-City area and there's plenty of hotels, but they're all price gouging because so many people go in to watch that race. They're just price gouging the hotel, so nobody even wants to go anymore because they don't want to pay $400 for a hotel room in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee.
Right, and then also pay the steep price to get into the race. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I hear you. Well, obviously, my hope for Nashville is that it is successful because that gets me down in the Lewis NASCAR dungeon and then lifting over there with you. And then, yeah, hopefully we're done with this COVID-19 stuff soon, and safely so that we can go to Kentucky, and possibly get some of our friends up here for that. Sorry, I keep having to lean back to Bert,
Mm. I just
but
let it seep through my nose.
yeah, I mean, you kind of gave up that Chase Elliott's your favorite driver, and we'll dive into our favorite drivers, I'm sure, in another episode. But he's had quite the roller coaster ride as we've gotten back racing. I mean, as much of an emotional swing as you can have as a NASCAR driver, from a Sunday night to a Wednesday night to a Sunday night to a Thursday night. He's kind of gone up and down, and I think it's played a little bit with your emotions too.
Yeah, I mean, really, he's really come into himself as a driver. He's been in the sport a long time. He's really had a lot of practice. He's put in the time, and I think that he's at a point now where he is a top contender, and he's proved that. And he's up there in the top 10 a lot. And racing happens, and I think that's what has happened recently. You know, he was a part of a mistake from Kyle Busch that you just don't see out of Kyle Busch. So it was,
I'm making the quote symbol mistake.
yeah, and it's hard to believe that that kind of mistake was made, and it was about to rain, and Denny Hamlin won, and it just, as much respect that I have for those guys, um,
It stinks.
it
It
does. It
stinks.
does stink.
It smells bad when you talk about it. I mean, Joe Gibbs has edged out, if that's what you want to call it, mistaken out, wrecked out the Hendrick team a couple times now in key situations, and in those situations it's just happened to be Chase. I mean, but he went from when this all started back up, he went from Kyle Busch situation, then he goes Wednesday night and almost wins, but Allen calls him back into the pits. So Brad wins, and it's all kind of come full circle with Brad, but then he goes and wins the Bounty. Then he wins the next race at Charlotte, and then he comes back to Bristol and moves up the track and takes out Joey, and then Brad wins again. So it's been this like roller coaster of emotion for him. And,
I think that just shows that he's not where a driver that would be if he was in the sport for 10 years, I think. And he's just racing hard, and that's part of it. And I would be pissed if it was somebody else that got loose and took out my driver, if they took out Chase. But that's just what happened. I do think that Chase should have walked over to him and kind of like, hey man, I got loose and sorry, that was my bad, and he didn't want to do that. And Joey's all been out of shape, and
it's hard to take him seriously when his hairline is so far back. His glasses and his hairline are just all out of whack. But yeah, I mean, I get it. I get the frustration. All I can say is at least it's not Jimmy Johnson wrecking himself. So that's all I can say. I don't want to dive deep into, all our nitpicking with our favorite drivers, because we'll do that another time. But
Jimmy, you can win this stage. You're half a lap away.
Yeah.
No, I will not.
Just trash your car and get in the garage, please. So, yeah. I think we'll wrap it up, and on the next episode, we're going to kind of talk more about, we've briefly touched on, our path into racing and out of touch with racing and what ultimately brought us back. But we'll dive more into that. And, maybe we could get Mike on for a minute to tell his story when we were all together, and, conference him and see if he'll tell us about how he took a nap at a NASCAR race. And
I think that would be great. I think outside perspectives for somebody who doesn't know anything about the sport coming into it, and then also our other friends who know more than we could ever know about it.
Absolutely.
And just seeing where this goes, seeing where it takes us. I'm excited about it.
All right, well, that's all we have for you all today on the first episode of Going In Tight, Coming Out Loose podcast. If you enjoyed it, we would appreciate it if you would subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. You can find us on any major podcasting platform. Additionally, you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is @goingintight_pod. Or you can find us on our website, goingintightpodcast.com. We appreciate you all, and we will talk to you next week.